Well, this week we're dealing with Healing Waters for Women. It's an event designed to assist us in preparing our space. And notice I said us, because although it's for women, it's also for men. It helps us to tune in, tap into our divine feminine selves. And so, those men who are tuned in, tapped into this conversation tonight, don't listen with your maleness, listen with all of who you are. So, we are prepared today to bring you day 3 of tonight's so your Ignite Your Soul connection. Let me start with just introducing myself. I am one of the I would say plank owners, meaning one of the individuals who first started with Masters Force introductory class. And that was back in 2010. I'm currently residing in St. Louis, Missouri. I must be here on a mission because there are some other places I would love to be. I just left the Vortex, Phoenix, California, Phoenix, Arizona. I was there for a while. I'm currently working with the VA Medical Center here, but my full-time or my life passion, purpose, things that I'm in pursuit of is I'm the facilitator for Divine Center of Spiritual Learning called the Oasis Spiritual Center. It's an expanded conversation helping those who are transitioning out of traditional Christianity into a more expanded spirituality. So I am a Master Force life coach. I've spent quite some years coaching, and now I'm just inside of teaching and helping those individuals to go inside. And the reason why I say I go inside, I have a master's in counseling psychology, and for a long time I practiced about 25 years, and then I began to get into the life coaching world. And the thing about life coaching, I find that it's not just focusing on your clients, but it helps you really understand that every client that sits in front of you is probably reflecting something to you to evaluate yourself on. So as a Master Force life coach, it has helped me immensely in the work I do as a spiritual facilitator of change, as a father of 4 adult children, 10 grandchildren, as a contributor to society at large. Master Force has expanded my worldview and the way I view my personal world. So let us get started tonight with the introductions of our speakers. And we'll start with Dr. Sonji Jones-Manson. Good evening, Sonji. If you would take a moment and share with us where you're living, what you do in life. And I'll ask you a couple questions if you don't cover what I need you to cover. Welcome.
Sure. Thank you, Greg. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Sonja Jones-Manson. I am a Chicagoan, born and raised. I'm still here in Chicago. I'm currently working, I do freelance consulting. I do strategic planning and development, primarily for nonprofit organizations that are young and in the startup phase. And so I enjoy working with individuals and with organizations who are beginning something new and fresh or looking to level up. And so that's where I anchor my work. I also have a couple of new endeavors that I'm embarking on. I just launched an Etsy store called Inside Job by Sandra, where I offer tarot and oracle readings. And in 2021, I will begin receiving clients as a life coach.
Awesome. What made you become a life coach?
So I became a Master Force certified life coach in 2015, and I was looking for opportunities to expand kind of the work that I was doing. I've been working in nonprofits and education for about 17, 18 years. And so at the time, I met Moot at a party at one of my classmates' homes, and we began talking, and she was explaining to me about what a life coach is. I had not heard of a life coach before, but I thought it would be a good path not only to position myself to branch off from just working with nonprofit organizations, but also the work that we learned was so relevant to the work that I was doing with young people because I work with youth. It was something that I was able to apply immediately.
Awesome. One last thing. How has this changed your life?
Just in an immense way, really mainly by helping me to do my own work. And I would say that's the best way that the experience of just training to become a life coach and going through the certification process has helped me, because change starts within, and but before I can help anyone, I need to be able to help myself, and having those tools and being able to use myself as a test subject has been the most beneficial part of the process.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Dr. Sonji Jones-Manson. Well, our next speaker or guest tonight is Jiquay Glenn. Good evening, Jiquay. How are you today?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you this evening?
How are you doing today?
I'm doing extremely well. Well, I would like to give you the opportunity to share with our listening audience and those who are viewing this evening a little bit about yourself. If you can tell us where you currently live, what you're doing in life, and perhaps how long you've been a Master Force life coach, and what's been one of your greatest takeaways inside of that.
Absolutely. So I'm currently residing in Jackson, Tennessee. We holding it down here in the South. And I am the co-founder of Leadership Institute for Transformation and Empowerment. We specialize in shadow work and cultivating your authentic self. Became a Master Force life coach, certified life coach in 2015. I actually met Moo on through Facebook. My husband and her became friends first, and we were talking about the things that we were doing here in Tennessee, and we realized that we had a lot in common. So she invited us to go through the Master Force to become Master Force certified life coaches. And we joined then. And what it did, the takeaway from Master Force for us was finding people that look like us that did the work that we do. We're in the Bible Belt. So religion is prominent down here, and the way that we think about things and the way we do things were a lot different. And so we saw a lot of people that didn't look like us that did the work that we did. But when I met Moo, it was refreshing to find out that there are people that look like us that did what we did. So
Okay,
been going
good.
strong ever since.
Awesome, awesome. So how has it changed your life?
Um, for me, it can it cultivated it kind of evolved. So again, starting off as ordained ministers, Timothy and I were uh deep in the church as ordained ministers, as a prophet and an apostle. And as we began doing our work and going through our different changes, we realized that we needed more, and that what we were getting from religion wasn't working from us. So we began studying on our own. And as we began learning and going through the changes in our life, we began to share with people. And people were like, can y'all teach us how to do this? Can y'all do that? So it was like, yeah. So it kind of like took on it took on a life of its own, and we just ended up in this spot. But it has definitely changed our lives a lot in the aspect of releasing old mindsets and beliefs that kept us kind of trapped, especially in the Black community, with the
Mhm.
things that we hold on to and how we operate and move. It could keep us in a victim mindset. And it is wonderful to see people taking control of their lives and choosing to live in an authentic way and cultivating the life that they desire versus the life that they've been told that they have to live.
Yes. Did you find that your participating in Master Force helped you make the transitions and deal with others who have a particular spiritual path and see conflict in that? Did you see it any way that your coaching has helped you in that conversation?
Well, we were doing this work before with Moot, but what it did was give us more resources to show them that, yeah, it's other people out here doing this work. It's not just something we're doing here in Tennessee, and that it's other people who have these mindsets, and connecting them with Moot and other coaches um, in Chicago and all over the world has helped a lot of people realize that they can expand and let go of the fear they have of thinking differently, not being like everybody else.
Yes, yes. Excellent. So I'm going to ask you this question, then I'm going to take this question back to Dr. Sonji Jones-Manson, and then she's going to answer the first question. So the question
Okay.
is, what's your focus or your expertise or specialty as a Master Force coach?
My specialty is shadow work. So my job is to get you to shift from the victim mindset and to looking at the patterns and the belief systems and the things in your life that you identify with and thought that were you, and to challenge you and push you outside of your comfort zone and get you to realize what you need to release, what you need to transform, and maybe what you need to move forward in.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Jaquay.
Absolutely.
Dr. Sonji Jones-Manson, what's your focus or expertise as it pertains to your coaching?
I would have to say a process that's similar to accompaniment, because I do strategy and development.
Mhm.
My expertise really is being able to connect with someone where they are, help them flesh out where they want to be, and then accompany them on the journey to move from point A to point B. And so I use a lot of the tools I use with organizations before I became a trained life coach. Same process, same tools, but I would say accompaniment.
Awesome. So tonight we're dealing with the plan to heal. So I'll start with you, Dr. Jones-Manson. The question is, in Master Force, we talk about healing utilizing the life quadrant. Can you explain to our audience what we mean by that, or how you utilize that when dealing with your clients?
Sure. So, just a brief explanation of what the life quadrant is. A life quadrant is comprised of the four areas of yourself: your mental self, your emotional self, your physical self, and your spiritual self. The way that I incorporate life quadrant or MEPS into my work is at different levels and stages. So, I mentioned that I do accompaniment. So, of course, there's a discovery process that goes on. So, in the discovery process, when we're discovering and thinking about where is it that you want to be, looking at and examining where you are right now, then of course I like to use the life quadrant to break down the different components of that desire, to break down the different components of the dream that someone is looking to aspire to achieve. So mentally, how are you feeling about this? Emotionally, how's it showing up in your physical space and your spiritual space? And so I insert the life quadrant in different parts of my accompaniment process.
Awesome. Awesome. Jiquay, how are you? Can you tune in on that question?
Yeah, just piggybacking off of what Sandra was saying, the MEPS is important because it helps us address the whole being. We know that we are all interconnected beings. So if our mental is off, then our emotional, our spiritual, and our physical is going to be off. So we have to address all four of these areas, and they have to be whole in order for us to heal the whole being, right? So if the way that I think about a certain experience in my life is off, if I have negative values around it or belief systems around that, then that's going to affect the way I feel about a certain thing. It's going to affect the way my spirituality, way I process that. It's going to affect the way I move physically. As we all know, all those things affect us physically. It colors everything that we do. So it's important that we address those four areas and get those four areas as healthy as clear as possible so we can be a whole being.
Yeah. Before we move on to our next question, when dealing with your clients and you're using the MEPS quadrant, do you find that people are more comfortable in any one particular quadrant, or have a difficult time in dealing with a particular quadrant? Either one of you can address that.
Well, I'll say yes because whenever I'm sorry, clients come to us, they always come to us with one area they're going to address, right? So you have a client come that's having health issues. They'll start off with the physical component of it. Our job is to get them to understand that the rest of the components also are just as important to address before we can even address their physical. Because if your mindset is not right, if your emotions are off, even with spirituality, you have to have something to ground you in what you do. It's important for us to teach them to navigate through all of them, but they always approach us with one. Spirituality tends to be the one, spirituality or emotions. I say those tend to be the hardest too, because a lot of people are not connected to their emotions. So I do spend a lot of time connecting people back to their body and connecting to their emotional state. But once we get them past that uncomfortable place of being willing to connect to those two things, then they seem to all flow together.
Okay.
Yeah, and when I'm working with clients, of course, with the nature of my work, a lot of it is in the physical realm. It's dealing with career, it's dealing with some goal, some material goal that an organization wants to achieve. They want to make a program better. They want to launch a new program, or an individual. When I was working with youth, it was I want to get into this college, or help me figure out this path. So for me, just by nature of the work that I was doing in the spaces in which I was using it, a lot of it initiated with physical, but being able to do the work, as Jaquay said, to connect them to other areas and how their desires or blockages to their desires were manifesting in the other areas so that we can work on the whole person.
Awesome. In most of our lives, there's usually a crisis or something that is a catalyst for us to begin to do that work. So, what was the health crisis, if there was, that you went through that made you know you needed to heal? We'll start with Jaquay on that one.
So I actually went through a couple of health crises. The first one that started for me was in my 30s. I was having emotional ups and downs. I couldn't figure out what was going on with me. I gained weight. I could not release that weight to save my life. And I was irritable all the time, exhausted, and doctors couldn't figure out what was going on with me. I went from doctor to doctor to doctor, and no one could figure out what's going on with me. So I made a decision to take my health into my own hands. I started doing research. I started looking up my symptoms, putting things together. And then that led me to really focusing on my diet and my nutrition first and foremost, to try to get as much nutrients into my body as possible to try to balance it. And from there, once I made up my mind that I was going to heal what was going on with me, I was able to find me an integrative medicine doctor who also believed in holistic healing and worked with me and began to teach me how the medical system kind of works today, especially against Black people. Just being honest, putting that out there, and showing me how to look at values and things myself and what they mean and how to take control of my health for myself. So doing all of that, I was able to get my thyroid back balanced without using medication. I was able to get my hormones balanced because I was going through a hormonal attack. And I was able to get all of those balanced and to bring my system back into peace. And then right after that, I went through a crisis with my parents where my mom got sick. And when you go through something like that, your body tends to hold on to a lot of the trauma. It holds on to a lot of the emotional things that you go through during that crisis. So I began to have chronic excruciating pain consistently. I could not lay down for weeks at a time. I would get 1 to 2 hours of sleep because I would have shooting pains in my head and down my back. Went to the stomach issues. I couldn't eat. I think I only ate broth and 2 crackers a day. I lost 40 pounds because I couldn't eat. That went on for about 6 to 8 months. Again, doctors couldn't figure out what was going on with me. But based off of what I know metaphysically is that I was holding on to a lot of the trauma and the things that I went through that experience. So I went through the process of nutrition again, however I could, because I couldn't really take in through a lot. But I do a lot of emotional healing. And then I went to therapy and I got something called brain spotting, in which they help you find the trauma that's located in your brain and where it's located and help you release it. And it helped me get rid of the chronic pain that I was in and help me move forward.
Awesome. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing.
no
Awesome.
problem.
Good, good. I'm going to ask the same question of you, Dr. Jones-Manson. Is what was the health crisis that you went through that made you know you needed to heal?
First of all, let me say thank you for sharing that, Jaquay. And
Mhm.
if any of you guys have not experienced this woman, she is amazing. I just want to give her a shout out in this
Thank you,
moment.
girl. Thank you,
You're welcome,
girl.
darling. But I saw that question out and I thought and thought and thought about it. And I have to be honest, there is not a health crisis that I experienced that helped me realize that there was some healing that needed to happen. I've been very blessed and fortunate to not have had an encounter for the most part with any serious health issues, and it made me think about well, how did I get into this space? And for me it was spiritual. um I had been embarking upon a spiritual journey since 2000. And I had decided after going through different ebbs and flows about how I felt about God and what I was thinking about God, I finally found a church home in 2000, and I was there, and it was an amazing church home. I have an amazing teacher. He's still my mentor today. But I was very hungry for growth just because I like to learn. And once in 2000, something clicked in me that made me want to decide, okay, I want to really do some sort of spiritual learning and growth. And so, of course, because what I knew was go find a church home, that's what I did. I went to go find a church home. And it's 20 years later, I'm still involved with the church and the ministry. And the teaching I received was so powerful um, and so direct and open. It wasn't it wasn't whitewashed spirituality. He's very down to earth. And so I was really actually being taught, but I learned there how to do more of my own spiritual development and research. And so a searchlight was turned on in me, and I just continued to search and search and search. What I know now that I didn't know then was that was the point of entry for me into this healing work, because my mind and my emotions, there's nothing going on in my body. My mind and my emotions were so focused. I mean, I do strategic planning for a living, so you can imagine how my brain works. So everything was so focused on the next thing, the next goal, and move, move, move. So when I ran into Moot at this party, I think it was on her birthday, and
Our birthday.
oh, you all's birthday
That's
in 2012. And I followed up with her with an informational meeting at a Starbucks on the south side of Chicago. And that's when she really broke down to me what it was. And my interest was, again, very technical, my interest was. But when I got into the program, um, it made me slow down. And it made me begin to think about my own spirituality in different ways. And so, you know, one of the messages I wanted to make sure I shared today was that sometimes people don't know that they need to heal. Sometimes people are so busy and we're so into what we're doing, and we have our goals set because we were trained and taught you need a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan, and you got to work that plan and you got to plan to work. And some of us are really good at it. And so we move and we move and we move, and we don't know that we need to heal. And so I know that the universe brought Moot into my orbit because it was time for me to be still. And it was time for me to begin to recognize that I did need healing. Now, recently, last year, I started consulting independently last year. And I was working for an organization and was experiencing relationships that I still did not connect to the physical ailments that I was experiencing. I had developed trigeminal neuralgia, which is it's a condition where your nerve thinks it's under attack, so it shoots sharp pains through your face. And I had a huge sty over my eye. It was in my wedding picture, so I couldn't get rid of it. And I still didn't realize when that was going on. I thought the problem was me. I thought I wasn't eating right. I was fixing my diet. I was doing all the external things. And it wasn't until I left that job because the toxicity was so high that my trigeminal neuralgia had dissipated about a month after leaving. And it had gotten so bad that at that point, the neurologist had told me that I need to begin to think about brain surgery in 2 years. Because they had given me the highest dosage of the medication that they could give me, and he couldn't up it anymore. But I left that toxic situation, and then my body began to heal. But the thing is, I still didn't know while I was experiencing that pain that I wasn't connecting it to anything else because my brain was so focused. So mindfulness is key to a plan to healing, and that's why I always start there when I'm meeting people where they are.
awesome. Well, I want to interject something here. Many times when you hear this conversation of healing, and I hear it more so from women than men because men don't quickly as women tune in, tap into what they need. It's usually tied to emotional healing. But I wanted to ask the question about healing, a plan to heal, from the perspective of Dr. Louise Hay. She says in her books, You Can Heal Yourself, that your body, when you're showing a contrast in a particular area, is telling you something about something you need to do the work. Can you, either when you talk to that and how you perhaps incorporate that into what you do?
Absolutely. So when we're looking at any type of ailment, any type of issue that we're dealing with, you can always trace it back to a belief, right? So you can trace it back to some type of experience in which you develop this belief about yourself, and at some point, your body's going to get your attention. So for even listening to Sandra talking about her situation that she was going through, and we talked about that in some of our conversations that we had. Um, a lot of times, like you said, with women, we're not connected either. We're really not connected to our emotions because it's not what we're taught to do. But when you sit down and you really start doing the work on looking at how you got to where you are today, and you begin to look at the way you moved and operate through life, and what belief system you're carrying and what emotional state that you've been in, you can trace that thought process back to what ailment you're dealing with. So for me, as I was talking before about the trauma that I had with my mother, the pain that I was having in my back and my neck, I was going to the chiropractor, and like Sonji, I was doing everything I could outwardly to make it happen. And it wasn't until I met a friend of mine who's a therapist, and she was like, let me try brain spotting on you. And I was like, okay, what is that? And so she was explaining what the brain spotting was and how we can find the trauma or the thought process and it can be released and that help with your pain. So when I went through that, I meditated and I asked myself, what experience did I have that my body is holding on to? And I'm using this example because I really want you to understand that the body does trap experiences inside of itself. Okay. So one of the experiences that I had in the hospital with my mom is when she first had her surgery. She woke up and they were trying to get her to go use the bathroom, and she was in pain. They weren't listening to her. So when they went to sit her up, she went into a grand mal seizure, shook, and passed out. um, they didn't believe me when I told them she had a seizure. They was like, no, she just did. We don't know what's going on with her. It took them 3 days for them to realize that she kept having seizures over and over again. So that was just like planted in my head. I'm watching my mother die, right? I couldn't get the doctors and stuff to listen to me. They want nobody to pay attention to me. This is a black woman. They don't give a damn. I'm just being honest. So one day she was having one of her seizures, and one of the doctors who came by, not doctors, the nurses who helped with trauma came by, and she recognized her having a seizure. So she looked at me. She was like, you was right. You knew your mother was having seizure. So they rushed her into surgery, and they found out that when they stood her up, that because of the tumor that she had, they didn't realize that it had fused her spleen to one of her kidneys. So when they stood her up, it ripped and she was bleeding internally. They rushed her to, had the surgery, clean, did all that, clean her up, brought her back, and she began to recover the way she was supposed to. That experience stayed with me. It stayed with me and it played over and over and over again. So when I went to get my first session of brain spotting with my therapist, that's the one that came up for me to work on. And we did that brain spotting. And I had been in pain for weeks. Like, I'm on muscle relaxers. I'm going back and forth to the doctor. I can't sleep. In 2 weeks, it was gone. It left. I didn't feel that pain, and I haven't felt that pain again. So that's just an example of with Louise Hay. She talked about how every thought leads to a disease in the body. And for me, it was that experience in the hospital with that trauma and me playing over and over again that I could have done something differently. I had to release that. I had to process that. I had to acknowledge that. And then using that brain spot and let it go. And I haven't been in pain since.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. Come
Dr.
on, Sonja.
So
Come
I'm okay. So, Greg, can you repeat that question again? I have to admit, I was reading Caitlin's question in
Okay. Well,
the chat.
I was framing it around our bodies speaking to us. And if you're familiar with Dr. Louise Hay's works, how do you incorporate that, or how do you use that in your own life?
So I'm not familiar with Dr. Louise Hay's.
Okay.
I haven't read it, but I do understand that your body traps whatever blockages or whatever ailments, and whatever negative energy in your body is trapped, and then it forms and develops into something else. And I just I wanted to share, and I don't mean to jump around, but I saw Caitlin's question about how did you discover the healing process, and go ahead, Greg.
There was a question that I was going to give you. How have you changed, or what did you discover about yourself as you went through your event, through that healing process?
So I'm still in the healing process. My healing process is ongoing, and until I'm a fully balanced person within and without, until all my energies are evenly balanced, I'll continue to go through this healing process. So I do believe that it's a healing journey, and not necessarily a destination or a space to get to at the end. So I'm still in that process, and what I had to heal from was my state of being. I had to heal from the programming that I bought into at a very young age. I was a good student. I wanted to, always be on that side of the fence, on the good side and not on the bad side. And so that was a programming. That was a mindset. And so really my healing comes in the form of recognizing a program and doing the work of deprogramming myself. But when you remove something in the healing process, you have to fill that empty space with something. You can't just heal and cut away without filling that space with something, that wound with something. And for me, it was truth. Truth and understanding, not only who I was, but why did I buy into the program? And so, that what and the why questions are key for me. What is this is going on and why? Why is this going on? And that's the healing process. So I can't really say I healed from something, because I'm still answering questions, and every time I get an answer, there's another layer that's pulled back to my healing process as well.
That's a great segue into our next questions, which you could start with. So what practices do you utilize on a daily basis to maintain your health? And Jiquay, I'm going to come right back at you with that question.
So for me to maintain my health, of course, nutrition. So what we put in our body first is always foundational key to maintaining our health. So diet, I eat mostly vegan diet. I do allow myself to eat some meat or some sugar sometime, but I'm constantly doing detoxes, smoothies, making sure I'm putting great nutrition in my body, sea moss, supplements, things to strengthen my immune system and to keep my body on par, as well as the hormonal things to keep my hormonal balance together. Next, physical. So we have to address the physical part of healing when we're talking about healing. We got to keep our body moving to connect with our body. So yoga, walking. I love to walk, meditation, things like that. And as well, the mental and emotional health part. So I have a team. I got a coach, a therapist, great friends, journaling, meditation, things like that. Those are the things that I do to keep my myself in a healthy state. But last but not least is knowing when to play. We have little girls and little boys inside of us that need to play. They need time to be nurtured. So I make sure I do the work to stay in touch with my inner child to see what she needs, what I need to do to cater to her. And lastly, I stay on top of my shadow work because those are my places of power, the places that my wounds come from, the places that I shy away from, even the things that I desire to do and I don't have belief that I can do them. I'm always facing them, addressing them, and constantly evolving them so that I can be my authentic self. To walk in my space of authenticity is what keeps me at my healthiest.
Awesome. Good. Can I call you Sonja?
You sure can.
Okay, good. All right, make it a little more personal.
That's fine.
What are some of your practices that you take on to maintain your healthy space?
So for me, since my wounding was imbalanced because I was so heavy in my physical life quadrant with career and goals, for me it's establishing balance. And so the way I do that is routine. I have to have a routine. I have to have time set aside to do what I call a check-in. And I do the check-in across all the components of my life quadrant, and it has to be my quiet time and my space. And some people call it meditation, and it depends on what's going on and what I do in that quiet time. I can journal in that quiet time. It depends on what's coming up for me. I can journal. I always do grounding work. I always do breath work, and I always do some work to ground myself before I enter into that quiet, sacred space. Oftentimes I do a lot of journaling. Sometimes I pull out some EFT if something emotional is coming up, some tapping that I may need to do. But it's always doing a check-in. And I do the shadow work as well. Like I have to get in there and ask those questions because I have to balance. And my goal in all of this is to, as Jiquay said, is to get to my true authentic self, to kind of release that person inside of me. And so that I'm not being the person everyone wanted me to be, that I was being trained to be, but actually learning how to be my true authentic self. And so, but those are the primary tools: journaling, the routines. I do it at the same. I get up before everybody else in my quiet space, and I just have time to kind of slow my brain down and to tap into messages from spirit. I also use tarot and oracle cards, which provide a snapshot of a moment in time of certain energies that surrounded me, or certain type of balancing areas that I may need support in balancing as well.
See, that's one of the big takeaways that I have gotten from Master Force is we have a toolbox that has so many practices that we can take on. And as we're talking about plan to heal on tonight, which is day 3, that talks to me in the area of prevention. And when you're talking about your practices, they're not so much from what I sit. I don't hear them coming from a place of this is being done in response to something, but I hear you are saying this is being done in a proactive way as practices of my life. Does that am I picking up the right message there?
Yeah, I would say in a sense it's proactive, but there was something that there was a response to, and for me it was that urging in my spirit, to learn more about spiritual things and learn more broadly about spiritual things. And Jiquay mentioned her health problems that she had, so there was an initial response, but ongoing it becomes a way of being, because at the end of the day, I think for anybody who wants to heal, for anybody what is healing really? A desire to be made whole. And so whether that's from something physical or whether that's from something uh, mental or emotional, anybody who's searching for healing is searching for wholeness. And so what does it mean to be made whole? It means that you're trying to balance and bring together those 4 different components of yourself. Mm-hmm. And you have to be able to figure out, in order to do that, you have to be able to go in and, first of all, identify what's the status of each of those areas, and then what's blocking them, what's keeping them from being whole, mm-hmm. what's stopping you from soothing the wounding that mm-hmm. has happened in any of those 4 areas of the life quadrant.
Yeah, and I'm gonna address that too, Greg. You said it's more proactive, but think about it. Like she said, there was an initial response. I did have a health crisis. So what I did to get out the health crisis, I have to do to maintain my health. It's kind of like in a relationship. How you start off a relationship and you want to keep that same energy of the relationship, you got to keep doing what you did. So I may not have to do it to the extent that I did it when I was trying to get out of the health crisis, but I still have to keep those practices going to get into a proactive state to keep my homeostasis state where I want to be, if that makes sense.
Yes. So,
and then I just want to add to that too, Jiquay, because when you're going in and you're doing this work, like the health crisis may have brought you to the point, my spiritual journeys may have brought me to the point, but then I learned that, I have people pleasing issues as I was doing the work. Mm-hmm. So now I have to pivot and I have to break that down, right? Because I want to be a whole person. And so whatever brought you to the work, once you start doing the work and you begin to uncover other things, you have to pivot, right, and deal with whatever that is that came up in whatever area. And so it's definitely, healing is not linear. No. This is not a linear process. It's a scribble scrabble. Like
it's an ebb and flow. It's a moving in and out.
It's the only way to describe it. Right. And so you can't go into healing work thinking, okay, I have this diabetes or whatever, let me just focus on here, because while you're focusing on that, you're going to come up with some other stuff. Some childhood issues are going to come up. You have to deal with inner child issues. A whole bunch of stuff is going to come up, and you have to be flexible enough to be willing to pivot if you truly want to be made whole. Now, if you just want to put a Band-Aid on the thing that brought you to the table, go ahead and put your Band-Aid on. But if you want to heal and you want to be made whole, then you have to be willing and flexible to pivot. There's a difference between triaging and healing. And oftentimes we want to triage. We want to identify what the problem is. We want to categorize it and say, yeah, I know I got this going on, girl. And oh, this is real bad. I need to do something about that. Well, that's triage. Healing is, let me roll up my sleeves and get into this dirty work, into this hard work and my mental self,
Absolutely.
my emotional self, my physical and my spiritual self. Now you're trying to heal because you want to be whole.
Let me see that stuff that I don't want to see. Let me see that stuff that I hide.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're speaking of right there. Let me pull my sleeves up and dig into my dirt because can't nobody clean this up but me. I made this dirt. I'm the only one that can clear this dirt.
Yeah,
That's what real healing look like.
yeah. Let me dip into one of the questions that we have out here this evening. How can you identify those thoughts that create physical ailments and release them? So, how can you identify the thought that create physical ailments and release them?
So when I start with my clients, I start with the basic thing of having them get the book "You Can Heal Your Life" by Louise Hay. That is a general book that begins explaining you the different thought processes behind the different diseases and ailments that we go through in our body. But at the end of the day, while you're on this spiritual journey, you are the main authority of you, and no one else is. You can have a guide. You can have a guide to help get you there, but you own the map. So, using your spiritual tools such as mindfulness, meditation, journaling, getting with a coach, getting with a therapist to help you process your life and your life experiences and your feelings, and doing that work, you will begin to go down a journey of pinpointing what it is that created the disease or the ailment in the first place. So start with that book. It's a movie for those of you who don't like to read. Start with something simple as that. But at the end of the day, you have to do the work to learn you. You have the map and the keys to you.
Yeah, I agree. That's the answer. You have to do the work, and you can work it from either one of two ends. You can work from the front to the back, which is where you are right now. I have a physical ailment. I'm trying to understand what this physical ailment is or what's behind this physical ailment, and then you do all the things that Jiquay just talked about to do that work. Or you can reverse engineer your healing and start from where you want to be. I want to be whole, so let me start from where I want to be and then work back to where I am now and figure out how you got there.
Good. So, do you have a particular practice that you enjoy most that you just as something that you do daily just for the sake of you enjoy it? Either of you?
Journaling and meditation. I can't function without that because it grounds me. And I'm an overthinker. I will overthink something in a minute. So what journaling does, it helps me do a mind dump. It helps me get all of my thoughts out of my head onto the paper where I can start doing something where I call creation method. So I get all those dumps out and I look at what I'm talking about and ask myself, does it align with where I want to go? And if it does not, then I'm going to do the work to go through the process to remove the things that I don't need, address the things that need to be addressed. As Sonja said, pivot where I need to pivot and transform what I need to transform. If I don't journal on a consistent basis, I can work myself up into some really bad anxiety. So I have to journal and I have to meditate.
Awesome.
I absolutely enjoy the quiet time, the meditation and sacred space that I mentioned, and journaling. I love journaling. I go back. I have periodic times in the month where I go back and review what I've written down in my journal, because I find that there are lots of gems and things that I've forgotten, things that I made notes that I've made to myself about things I need to focus on and do in the future. And but I let the business of my life kind of make me lose sight of that sometimes. But journaling is great because it's unstructured. It's yours. You do it how you want to do it. Your journal can look how you want it to look. It can feel how you want it to feel. You can free write one day. You can stream of consciousness one day. You can do some downloads, channeling. You can do whatever you want to do in your journal, and it's yours. But it gives you a space to be. It's the one place that you know you can be your true authentic self and
Absolutely.
really move into discovering who that is. So if you're not
Hmm.
journaling, I recommend that you get a journal, and get a journal that makes you feel good. Like I started with spiral notebooks because I have 4 children, so there's always a spiral notebook around. So I started with spiral notebooks, but then I've moved into getting journals that make me feel good, and I have journals for different things. Just because I'm not one person, so I have different things that I want to talk about. So I have different types of journals.
Mhm. So, one of the practices inside of Master Force is recapitulation. Can you speak to recapitulation as it pertains to like your journaling or your healing plan, your that plan of healing?
Sonja, I'm gonna let you go first this time.
Uh,
Well, Greg, would you mind defining recapitulation, please? It's been
so
since
re,
2015.
to recapitulate is to go over, like when we hit Mercury retrograde, it gives us the opportunity to slow down and to do over, if not a physical do over, a mental do over. So to recapitulate is like many times people will journal, but do we ever take time to recapitulate, to go back in our journals? That's the one thing I love about journals, unlike just being mindful or meditating. The journal is an item you can open up and go back. So I guess the question, another way of asking that question, do you find value in revisiting your journals, and do you have a plan? Like, do you do it like every 90 days, or you can speak to that for me?
Yes. As I mentioned, I do go back and I review my journals. I do it, I try to do it every 30 days at least, and I've been pretty good with doing that. But I also let what's going on in my life kind of move me too. Like, I keep visions, I keep my goals pretty updated. And so I revisit my goals as well. And because I believe in small victories. So, you have to go back and look so you can check off and you can see, you know what, I did this. And you can read an old entry and you can say, wow, look how much I've grown. Like, the way I was thinking about this issue here. And then, 7 days of shadow work later, look at how I'm able to understand it here. And so at the minimum, it will be a month, but I do it, whenever I feel the urge to, or if I feel stuck in my journaling, I just go back and read.
Awesome, awesome, great. Jiquay, did you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, like Sandra, I do the same thing. It's a practice that I do, especially when we're going into the new year. For me, for my birthday, because that's my new year. So I go back and look through my journal of the years past to see what lessons I've learned, to see the things that I've griped about, and did I make any efforts towards changing those things, or am I still operating in that same space? Um, Goals, like she said, I look over those. I try not to, for me, I try not to focus so much on goals and did I hit that or not during this amount of time, because again, I'm an overthinker and I can work myself into anxiety, but more of, have I shifted inwardly enough and that I'm on the path to meeting that goal, even if I haven't reached that goal. I had to learn how to practice compassion with myself. So that's a practice of mine that I do every year. Before 30 days before my birthday, I take some time out and I grab my journal from the year before and I go over to see how far I've come, what I've learned, what I would like to take into my new year for me and to create for that year. So
Awesome.
yeah, absolutely.
Good. Well, I've heard, I'm looking for some commonalities. I've heard both of you ladies mention shadow work. Can you take a moment and explain to our listening audience what shadow work is, and how it is incorporated into the work you do, either of you?
Okay. Okay. So shadow work was created and founded by Carl Jung. So Carl Jung defines shadow work as those parts of yourselves, of ourselves that we hide, shy away from, that we bury, those ugly pieces of us that we don't want anyone to know about. He goes on to begin to teach us that that is really the place of our power. So those places where you have guilt, shame, envy, those dark feelings that we shy away from because we're taught to be beings of light and light only. He teaches us that we are dual beings, that we are of the light and of the dark, and that it is our duty to being our authentic and most powerful selves to go shine a light on those dark spaces and reintegrate them into ourselves and take our places of power. So, how we teach shadow work here at Light is letting people know that those places that you shy away from, that you don't want anybody to see, is, if for those of you who never heard the term soul retrieval, is going back and taking places of power that you've given away. So most of us, we go through life and we have experiences and we bury those experiences, not realizing that there are pieces of our soul is shattered just through all those different times and places. Shadow works help you go back and gather those pieces that you've lost, reintegrate them, love them, because that's all they need. They need for you to look at them, have compassion, understand where you were at that time, that the choices that you made was based off the knowledge that you had at that time, that you couldn't have done any differently because that's all you knew. But now that you know better, you show yourself compassion to those places, reintegrate them into yourself, and you become a whole being. And now you can operate from a deeper place of authenticity.
Thank you. Yeah. Sonji?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I subscribe to the same understanding of shadow work. And, as we grow and develop from, childhood into adults, we have experiences in our lives, and we adopt certain archetypes, certain personalities, certain ways of beings to for different reasons. Some, they talk about in psychoanalysis, they talk about the different archetypes. You have the hero, you have the protector, you have these, and Carl Jung identified 12 of them, and various people identify different ones. But as you pick these personalities up that come up for a certain reason, sometimes we hold on to them, and we don't necessarily need them, and sometimes we might bury them down in those dark, shadowy places of ourselves. So it's important to understand when certain situations come up to trigger these personalities, and these archetypes, I should say, and they come up and they show themselves in your present time, and sometimes we don't understand, why is this triggering me? Why am I responding to this in this way? Well, maybe when you were 5, a protector archetype was developed to protect you from a certain emotion, to protect you from a certain experience that you had. But you don't get to, because this is stuff that's happening on a subconscious level, you have to go into the shadowy places to understand and retrieve this information. This is not happening necessarily on a conscious level. You have to be willing to go into the dark. And that's why it's called shadow work, and it sounds real scary, but it's your place of power, because those archetypes were developed from a place of power. It was developed, to keep you safe, or to advocate for you, or to help you set boundaries. But then you no longer needed them, and so they got pushed away. So that's why you have to be willing to go into those dark places.
So it's easy to work inside of practices that we enjoy, like journaling or meditating. Is there certain practices that you have had a challenge with, that you said you've asked yourself, why do I find it difficult to do that particular practice?
Meditating was very difficult for me because I didn't like sitting down and being still. For me, I could use my time to get something else done. It's like I don't have time to sit here for 30 minutes to meditate. I could be in here taking care of this. I have this list to take care of. I got to cook. I got a family. To me, it was a waste of time. So I really struggled with meditation. Sitting still just wasn't something I wanted to do. But, that's when I learned that that was really one of my issues, because sitting still and being mindful is a pillar of being connected to your spiritual and authentic self. How can you know you if you don't want to spend time with you? So I became intentional in practicing meditation and mindfulness and sitting still with me to get to know me. Because once again, at the end of the day, no one can heal me. No one can do my work for me. No one can create the life that I desire to create. In order for me to get to where I need to be, I need to know who I am and what's lurking beneath the surface that could be sabotaging me, or that I need to go and transform so that I can become who I want to be. So, as much as I love meditation, I hated meditation at the same time. It's a love hate relationship.
So for me, my healing journey has taken me to a space where I recognize the need to balance my masculine and feminine energy. I spent a large portion of my life operating in what I now know is greater yang energy, which is that divine masculine energy. And
Did you
there are
say, um,
I'm sorry.
can you repeat that?
Sure.
Okay.
Um, so my journey has taken me to a space where I realized that my healing is if in my healing journey, it's critical for me to balance my masculine and feminine energies. I spent a lot of my life in the comfort of the divine masculine energy, um, and all of that brings, because in this society, it's comfortable to be there. But learning how to surrender, which is a key component of operating in that feminine energy. is the act of surrendering. And so for me, that what was challenging for me is that surrendering meant accepting help. And in my spiritual journey, it meant accepting help from spirit guides and from ancestors. So doing that type of work was challenging for me. Is something that I'm just getting into, because I'm like, I had the attitude of, I don't need a middleman. I just go straight to God, the man creator. I don't need to be asking these ancestors and all of that. Why bother? Why waste my time doing that? Right? Because I want to streamline everything. I want to just get straight to the point. But understanding the value um, in my benevolent spirit guides, and whether I want them or not, they were there. So whether I acknowledge them or not, they've been doing the work. So that part was tough for me. And also because I was just like, I didn't want to open issues of control, right? So I don't want to open up something that I feel like I may not have control over. So continuing to healing my issues of dealing with feelings of loss of control, of having to surrender, that prohibited me from even considering doing ancestor work or working with spirit guides.
Awesome. Well, I've identified another commonality between you two ladies. You both have some significant men in your life called, I think, husbands. So let's shift the conversation inside of this conversation of a plan to heal. Let's talk about mirror work. I want to talk about mirror work first from the perspective of your husbands. How have they been integral? And you don't have to keep it at your husband. It could be a father, it could be a brother, it could be other men that have been in your life. How have they played in the healing process? So can someone start with maybe defining what mirror work is inside of Master Force? And then you both you ladies, if you can pick up that question.
You want to go first, Sonji?
No, I want you to define mirror
I
work.
knew
It's
you
your
was gonna do
wheelhouse.
that.
Got you back.
Okay. So mirror work is, it actually falls under the umbrella of shallow work, in which we learned about the seven SE mirrors. Sonja, you remember that when we taught that? The seven SE mirrors, and the mirrors reflect how the person shows up in your life and reflect parts of you that you may not be aware of, right? So let's do a basic example of that. So for my husband, how he shows up for me is
You didn't have to say mine. No, I was joking with
how he shows up for me. I think I'm gonna take it a different route because I want to express this differently.
you. Okay.
So I think it's important for us to understand that we operate in the masculine and the feminine within ourselves, right? So with that being said, it is the divine masculine job to be a container for the sacred feminine. My husband showed up for me by being that container. When we think of feminine energy, we think of wild, untamed energy. The feminine cannot be controlled. It's the creative force of life. It is the birther, the kingmaker. We Feminine energy is why we're on this planet. And the divine masculine is a container to protect that. I have a deep desire to be my authentic self because growing up in religion, you're taught you have to be this good girl, and good girl means this. And women look like this, act like this, operate like this, move like this, and this is what a good wife should do. And as I begin to go through my own transformations in my life and my own unhappiness and feeling trapped and wanting to come out and be myself, my husband has always had the grace to understand when he needed to let me go and be me because it was painful to keep me in this container. And we've even had conversations where he said to me, you're bigger than what everybody is wanting you to be, and I know that the only way you can be happy is for me to let you grow as big as you need to grow, right? So in that aspect of allowing me to step into my divine, my sacred feminine self, in turn, he had to go through his own transformations in order to become the container that I need to be his divine masculine self. Because when we step outside divine masculine, then we go into the ego masculine that wants to control. It wants to control and it wants to possess. So he had to learn to release the desire to possess and control and to allow me to be and to trust that in my divine feminine, my sacred feminine self, that I knew what I needed to do to be there and balance him. So we mirror each other in allowing ourselves the spaces to grow into our divine and sacred beings, sacred selves, and expand and understanding our purpose together to do this work. It's a deep thing, y'all. This ain't no shallow relationship we working with over here. We do some deep work.
Thank you for being transparent and sharing that.
Absolutely.
The ball's back in your court.
All right. So how do me and my husband mirror each other? Wow, I would have to say that I think it shows up, the mirror work shows up in my marriage and my relationship with my husband, and a little bit of what I was talking about earlier about me understanding the need to surrender and to receive help, because I don't, I have a mind, I used to have a mindset of, I got this. I can do this. I can handle this. Always putting myself in that position, even without realizing it. And he often showed up as a mirror for me, and he would mention it, and and say things about, hey, you should be, ask for help, and I wasn't seeing it. Of course, my immediate reaction would be to reject that, early in the earlier parts of our relationship. But he was there to show me that there was space for surrender, that there was space for support, and and that he was there in that space to be able to do that for me, in ways that it just honestly just did not cross my mind. Previously, I just was not programmed that way. So in that way, I think, he allowed myself to be a mirror. Um, and then you would have to ask him what I mirror for him. I don't want to speak for him. I don't want to speak for him necessarily about what I mirror for him. I know that we both had some work done with Timothy Glenn, who was here on day one. We've had some charts, and we've learned some things about, just just in our astrology charts, how it's uncanny the way that in our houses, and some of the ways that we mirror each other with mother and father work as well. And so that's a lot of deep stuff. I recommend that you get some charts done, especially if you're in a relationship. You both should get them done, so you can have a deeper understanding as well.
So inside of Master Force, there we have a specialty of relationships, and we do understand that relationships are key to us doing the work. Because left to ourselves, we wouldn't do the work. And many times, that person who shows up in our lives right here, right now, may not be the ultimate person, but maybe is the right person for right here, right now. Because in relationships, either we are given a lesson or we're receiving a lesson. In the best relationships, we're doing both. That's the dance of a relationship. And so, with that being said, can you speak to the other women who are out there tonight, many of who are not necessarily married, but what value can they get out of just the male relationships that they're involved in?
So I'm gonna start off saying for those type of women is that you have to understand that you teach people how to treat you, right? So if I'm teaching someone how to treat me, if I did an evaluation and looked at how I showed up in my relationship and how that person showed up for me, we're going back to mirror work. How you are experiencing your relationship is teaching you what you feel about yourself. It's teaching you what you allow. It's teaching you boundaries that you don't set. It's teaching you boundaries that you may need to learn to set. Relationships are the foundational teaching places in our life, every relationship, whether it's romantic, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's your coworkers. Those relationships are key to learning about who you are, where you are, what you think, and what you allow. Anytime you work with us, Tim and I, you'll always hear us talking about a victim mindset. When you're a person that people are always doing things to you, and this is always happening to you, and we don't play that. Whatever you are experiencing, you help create. Does that mean you want that? No.
It's
Consciously,
painful.
no. No one
Painful.
wants. It's painful, but no one wants to feel the type of pain that they're in. However, you have to take responsibility for your creation in that process, because you're either allowing it, or you, like you said, you're actively giving it and participating in it. So in order to change anything about our lives, anything in our world, we have to take responsibility for our participation in that process. Whether that means I need to go back and heal undealt with parental trauma or sexual trauma or whatever you experienced from your childhood, abandonment issues, that stuff shows up. So you have to be honest. I have women who've come to me who have had sexual trauma and they did not connect to the type of relationships that they are attracting is based off of their wound that they never looked at and never got healed. Or what does it have to do with anything? It has everything to do with anything with that, baby, because your lens, you're going to create people that's always going to cross boundaries with you. Sexual trauma is crossing a boundary. It's taking away your power. So guess what? Every man that you attract into your life, every female that you attract into your life, that person's going to have some form of crossing your boundary and taking your power away from you. And you're wondering why you're continually doing that. So just looking at that, just taking the time to question, why do I have the type of relationships that I have, can tell you so much about yourself and the places within yourself that you need to heal.
Powerful. Sonji?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the relationship has been just that, a mirror. I mean, and I can think of, as I'm listening to Jiquay talk, like every moment of my growth, as my growth continue, my healing continue to be elevated, and I move to the next level, understanding that the relationships I was in, even the relationships at work, the relationships I was in was showing me something. It was reflecting something back to me that I needed to address. So anything that I felt stinky about or didn't like or had an attitude about something, instead of spending time projecting it out, figuring out, okay, what is it that I'm not liking here? And then what is the feeling that's attached to it, right? So we're getting back into maps. What is the feeling? What is the emotion that's attached when I have this experience with this person? What is it doing to me physically in my body? Where's my mind going when this is happening? How is my spirit feeling in this space? When I have this interaction with my husband or with whoever else. And so understanding that relationships are just it's a training ground. I mean, it's just a space where you can learn more about yourself and engage more deeply in your healing.
Right. So one of the things we do inside of Master Force, because we have some awesome coaches, is sometimes we bounce things off of one another. So let's do something a little different tonight. So let's look at it from the perspective of you guys are working together on a client, and you're going to devise a plan to heal for someone who is struggling with diabetes. And so you guys are going to do a team approach on it. So how would you guys do that? Utilizing the life quadrant, what would it look like?
So since Sandra hadn't read the book yet, I would introduce to Sandra that
What's it about?
the definition of diabetes means the loss of joy in life, right? So already we think about the loss of joy in life, Sandra, we're thinking about mental and emotional. So that's the first thing we need to address is the mindset. So I will go back with the client and get a history on their life story. Um, get a history on how they experience life, how they perceive life. What is their belief system? What would they like for their life to look like? If they could do anything in the world, what would that be? Just to get a background on how their mind works. Sandra, I'm going to bounce it to you now. Come on, sweetie.
So then, we'll do that initial assessment and gather that information that Jaquay just mentioned. And then, of course, we would have to go through and evaluate and look for certain behaviors, attitudes, or patterns, look for any indications that something, um, of what's in their conscience, or any indications from their conversations or what the information that we've gathered, that there's something going on an unconscious level. And
Mm-hmm.
then we begin to hone in on those items. You would develop a plan based on what you discovered, to map out how you would begin to approach the issues that come up, based on the information that you get on the initial assessments. And then that plan, and then you just engage in this iterative process of reflecting and acting, reflecting and acting, reflecting and
Mm-hmm.
acting for each item that you find, for each level that it goes to.
Right. So we're working on reframing the mindset and reframing the thought process, knowing that if you change the belief system, then the emotional state will follow. Because if I change my belief, then my emotion will line up with my belief. Then we get into the creation process, right? So that's going through the mental and emotional. Spiritual, we need an anchor. We need to know what their belief system is with that. What a lot of people don't realize is that how you feel about your parents is how you feel about God or whatever spirituality that you participate in. So if you got any parental issues going on, that's how you want to approach your spirituality. So we need to reframe that as well. And of course, the last piece is the physical. We know with diabetes, we're going to address the diet, right? We're going to address we're going to address how they eat and what they take in and any physical aspect. And so I'm gonna let you continue on with that.
So I'm the
And then
math.
all along the way, we're giving them tools, right? So this isn't,
Absolutely.
so we're dropping tools based on what you're finding. You're pulling out your toolbox and identifying which tools they need to support them, because the ultimate goal is balance. So we're giving them tools all along the way. If it's something going on in a particular quadrant, and I think everybody can, if you look in chat, Moot has dropped the basic
But they can't.
the
But
basic
so
master
what some of the
force.
things you would
Oh,
use?
okay. So the tools are, EFT, by binaural beats, affirmations, Marv, and Bach flowers are the tools that you guys are learning in the Master Force program, that we've all learned in the Master Force program as well. And
Do
then
you
I
use
would
one
add,
of those in particular?
I'm sorry.
Do you use one of those particular tools
Oh
particular?
yeah, I've used all except for the Bach flower. My husband uses Bach flower. I have not used Bach flower personally, but I would recommend it if it was appropriate based on what was uncovered there. But in addition to that, some of the tools that we mentioned as well, the journaling, shadow work. I would also add in there chakra balancing, because you're talking about, diseases are connected to certain parts of our bodies, and energy imbalances and energy woundings. So also doing that type of work. Reiki healing is helpful as well. And so some of that will require you to send people out, and then sometimes I think we need to make sure that we understand that there are times where you might need to send someone out to a certain
Yes.
type of therapist or counseling, like the brain
Yes.
spotting. I'm also getting brain spotting therapy done. My one of my coaches recommended it for me, and I'm doing it. So knowing when you need to send them out as well
Mm-hmm.
is very important.
Mm-hmm. And I will add to that somatic therapy too, because again, we talk about how things get trapped in the body. So somatic body work is very good with that too. And we're going back to the mindset of, you know, losing the joy in life. So that Bach flower is really good for that. One in particular, walnut and agrimony, it helps you get in touch with those feelings so you can be in your authentic space.
Awesome. So I want to jump in here too. So it's everything happens for a reason. So on this past Sunday, I had a situation where I wasn't feeling right, and I'm one of divine health. I don't have sickness and disease, but I just wasn't feeling right. So I went to the ER, and they did a total workup, a CAT scan, an EKG, X-ray, and everything came back. The doctor said, "Wow, for you to be a 60-year-old man, you have a great results. We don't understand what it is." And I knew right then, I ruled out a physical. And so I'm now in the process of trying to identify what's going on emotionally and spiritually for me. So when you talked about sometimes we refer out because we do believe that the other sciences has a place, but we also understand that the most important thing is your body will tell you what's going on. Do you teach your clients how to listen to their bodies or that kind of intervention?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Go
absolutely.
ahead, Sandra. I'll let you go. Go ahead.
No, mindfulness is the key. I mean, that's what mindfulness is. It's being able to, in that present moment, being aware of yourself in each of your quadrants, your mental self, emotional, physical, spiritual self, what's going on in that particular moment in time. And that's a practice. That doesn't necessarily happen just, because we're a human being and we have awareness, because there's so many distractions in our world. So being able to practice that, and that's why it's important, all the things we talked about earlier, your what is your regular practice, what space do you get in, your meditation, your journaling, all those things help you become mindful. So, you know Greg, I would recommend that spend some time in a mindful space, right? So we ruled out the physical. Now you got to get down and explore that mental, emotional, and spiritual and figure out
Mm-hmm.
what was triggering that. And the area in your body where the pain was is a good starting point, because then you can begin to search out, okay, so in this particular area, what energy centers are ruling this, what is it connected to, and start there and then just begin to explore.
Yeah, and it was the heart chakra, And then even listening to our master teacher, shemsu-t, she was sharing with me that heart issues are dealing with striving for success. And I recently, after 20 years, I went back into the work world, and I'm just hardwired to succeed. And sometimes we have to learn how to take the oars out the water and just know that success is assured just by doing the things you do on a daily. You don't have to make it happen. You can allow it to happen. So that's therapeutic in and of itself.
Yeah.
We're right at
And Greg, I would even say with you being a Capricorn, you are hardwired for that success. So you have to make sure you stay out of that ego side of the Capricorn.
Yep.
That's like making it happen. And you have to, venture over to the, like you said, the part of the Capricorn and know that it just flows to you easily. So you
yeah.
have you being the Capricorn, you have to be aware of that.
Yeah. And I would add, this is one of those situations where you might want to reverse engineer. If success is the thing that's driving you, you need to break down success for yourself.
Oh
What
yeah.
is success? How are you defining success? Why are you
Redefine it.
defining success that way?
Right. And
Where did that
what's the
initial
motivation?
ideal of success come from? Where was that birth from? And now we're moving into some shadow work, possibly.
And you hit it
Absolutely.
on the head, because for 20 years I worked for myself and I didn't have these issues, but now I'm working for someone else. And so the need to feel to perform inside of those constructs. So all of this makes sense. And so I wanted to bring that forward so our audience can see real time how we are trained inside of Master Force to use particular techniques. We use numerology. We came forth with some dealing with these zoo types or zodiac signs. And so there's a lot of tools that are available to us that for many years were off limits. And now we are incorporating them as our crafts. So as we prepare to wrap up tonight, I'll have a couple more questions I would like to ask you, ladies. One would be, what are your top three tools? And we kind of covered some of this, or three tools, methodologies, or processes that are your favorite when it comes to the healing arts. So if you can, each of you can give me a tool or two that's your favorite just to use.
So for me right now, based off of the experiences and how I'm working with more women who've had traumatic events, somatic body work to release stuck emotions is one. Of course, emotional freedom technique, EFT, and journaling and meditation. I see them as one and the same. They have to be done together. Those are my top three. Because once we can release these trapped energies in our body and release these mindsets, these experiences that we have from our mind, the body automatically knows what to do, begins to line up, and it begins to heal on its own. And of course, the journaling and the meditation keeps you focused, keeps you understanding what's coming up for you, and it gives you the roadmap to where you need to go to get the healing done.
Awesome.
Journaling and meditation for me as well, and chakra balancing, tapping into your energy centers and being mindful of how they're showing up in your body when they're blocked, being able to know when they're blocked or when they're wounded, and when you can feel the energy becoming stagnant.
Mm-hmm. So let's share some information with our listening audience tonight. What are do you guys have websites? Do you have your personal websites that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, for us, if you want to work with my husband and I, we our website is theawakenedmagi.com. And also we're on Facebook, Leadership Institute for Transformation and Empowerment, Light, LITE for short. And we also have the Awakened Magi page that they can go to if they want to get in touch with us with that.
Awesome.
You can, if you want to contact and reach me directly, you can reach me at insidejobbySonja@gmail.com. I have an Etsy store for the tarot and the oracle card reading specifically. Same name, Inside Job by Sonja, and it's also you can find me there at Instagram and Facebook, Inside Job by Sonja.
Awesome. So we got about 8 minutes left before we wrap up. So you can give some thought to three things that people can do right here, right now, in order to move forward towards optimal health. What three simple things people can do right here?
So I believe in self inquiry. I believe in questioning everything. And how else can we get to know what's going on inside of us if we don't ask those hard questions, right? So, three questions that you can ask yourself right now. What beliefs or habits do I carry that get in the way of me choosing to do what's best for myself right now? What is one step I can make today that puts me closer to my desired goal? And who is one person I can contact to be my accountability partner that I'll actually listen to and show up for on a consistent basis?
Awesome.
And Greg, can I just add this to it? I want to throw some books out there too, because I cannot do anything without giving people references
Come on
in
now.
which they can go and learn. So I'm
Okay.
gonna throw some books out there based off of the things that we were talking about. And one of the books we talked about trauma being held in the body and how it shows up. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. It's an excellent book. If you ever had any type of sexual trauma or went through any type of traumatic thing like that, that book is excellent for helping you begin to understand how it shows up and manifests in your life and how to heal and release that. We talked about shadow work,
Hmm.
Owning Your Own Shadow by Robert A. Johnson. Great book on teaching you how to understand your shadow and how to work through it. And last but not least, the foundational book of understanding the metaphysical um, things behind all disease in the body is You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay.
Awesome. So Body Keeps the Score. You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, and you had a middle book there.
Owning Your Own Shadow by Robert A. Johnson.
Awesome. Good, good. Sanji?
And three things that people can do right now, tools they can walk away with, is to begin a daily practice of mindfulness. And you can do that simply by setting aside time. I prefer mornings, early mornings. Some people like to do it right before bed, but either of those two times where you begin with some breath work, do some grounding, visualizations, and then do a check in with your MEPS. Check in with your mind and your
Mhm.
questions. What and why are the two questions that you just simply need to ask. What am I feeling in my mind right now about whatever, and why am I feeling that? If you so begin that daily practice, um, put journaling on top of that so you can begin to capture the results and the outcomes, and then you can also then track and recapitulate as you go through. And the third one will be said, if you don't have a tribe in this work, if you don't have a support system to begin to do the work of getting one, and if you have no idea where to start, then to begin to inquire and approach Divine Creator about opening that pathway up and showing you how to get there.
Awesome. And then I also want to add to the listening audience that you can go to Master Force Leadership Academy website, Master Force Leadership Academy website, and out there you'll find a host of courses that you can engage in. You can do them virtually, and you can also sign on with some of the coaches to get some personal assistance. Are you guys currently taking on clients? And if so, how do they reach you?
So we are definitely currently taking on clients. We actually created a new coaching package for people who want to work with us during these times called Cultivating Resilience. Resilience is about creating the emotional fortitude to get through and bounce through this hard time because we are having a hard time on the planet right now. It's a lot going on, it's a lot of changes, it's a lot of loss going on, and people are really struggling with maintaining their mental health, their emotional health. So Timothy and I decided that we would create a coaching package specifically for to help support people with that. They can go to our the Wake and Magi page and or the wakeandmagi.com and find our cultivating resilience package that we have going on right now. And Sonji talked about getting you a soul group, a tribe to work with. We have the Awakened Magites group that we offer for people in which they get access to us, one-on-one coaching with us. They can come in and ask questions. Each Sunday we do a Sacred Sundays video in which we teach on the different things we talked about here. We go into depth and details about an hour long. Um, Timothy goes in, does astrology, teaching you about how to read, um, to understand your charts and teaching you about the energy that's going on the planet right now. We teach about altars, rituals. We bring in speakers to help, teach you different modalities and the spirit on the spiritual path, and you can be anywhere along your journey and find a place to fit in there.
Awesome.
And I am currently offering tarot and oracle readings right now, but in January I will begin taking on clients. And so if you are a young professional, and young not in age, but if you find yourself in a new leadership role, um, with an organization, or you're an entrepreneur and you're starting this new pathway, this journey into working for yourself or owning your own business, and you've been doing it for 5 years or less, and you're looking for someone to accompany you on your journey and to help you, help support you in your leveling up, then that's the type of coaching that I provide specifically for those individuals, because my niche is new and startup. Like, that's my entire career has dealt with creating strategies for new endeavors and for startups, and so I'm taking that into my coaching realm.
Awesome. And for those of you who are interested, who are perhaps in the Christian conversation, you could follow me at theplaceofpossibilities.com. And there you'll find how to embrace our spiritual community that's taken traditional Christianity, expanded it, incorporating all the things that you've heard here tonight. And inside that, you'll find also my personal coaching page, which is Solutions for Living. SOUL Solutions for Living. So we're right at the bottom side of today's hour, and I want to remind you guys again, you can go to https://master-force-leadership-academy//com, and you will find the website for Master Force. Now, before we wrap up tonight, is there anything that you didn't share that you wanted to share inside of this conversation? Oh, y'all just said it all, huh?
I think it was pretty clear. But we can add to that. We can always add to that that I want everyone to understand that your most important goal and service on this planet is to tap into who you really are, why you came here on this earth. It is the foundation for anything that you choose to do in life, is to understand who you show up as authentically. As long as you show up as your authentic self, everything else will fall into place. Your tribe will find you, your purpose will find you, your people will find you, and you will thrive.
And I'll just add, I did a quick little pull from my goddess deck since we were talking to the women today.
Yeah. Got me a little
So
message here.
I do have a little message for you. So we got the goddess Aphrodite came up today, and
My favorite.
she's come here to remind us to tap into your passions. Allow your passions to lead you to the answers that you seek. Is very important. And the supporting energy at the bottom of the deck was the Inuit goddess Setna for cleansing, who is reminding us to release those things, release those worries. Those worries block us from our passions. And so we need to let those go. And if you're having trouble doing any of that releasing, get near a body of water or take you a nice ritual bath.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight for Ignite Your Soul, Healing Water for Women, Year 11, Day 3, your healing plan to heal. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you, Dr. Sanja. Thank you, Jiquay. May you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you all.
Have a good night.